I have never gotten as many comments on a YouTube video as I got on my video. I've written code for 22 years. Here's what programming with AI is really like. It's a video where I basically just talk about my experience programming with AI as of late and sort of where I think things are headed and what's possible now and what isn't. Um, I got quite a bit of feedback from developers, vibe coders, from people who have been in the industry for a long time, from people who are just learning to code. And I wanted to first off thank you so much for all the feedback. Thank you for the positive words of encouragement. Thank you for the dissenting opinions. Thank you for the clarifications. I just appreciate all the dialogue, and I wanted to take a few minutes to talk about all of this stuff. Just take a minute to respond to comments individually, kind of the high level comments that make sense to respond to, as many as I can, and just share my overall thoughts on this and react a little bit to what you guys have to say. So let's dive in. So first off, MOK6379 says tech workers hoping AI will go away if they don't talk about it. Yeah, I think there is definitely a concept and a hope. Like, obviously everyone hopes that the time that they spent in their industry is going to continue to be valuable in the future, right? Nobody wants to be turned into a dinosaur and all that sort of thing. And I think there is I don't think that the tech industry, of course, isn't going to stay the way that it is right now for a long time. It won't. Everything always changes with tech. We go from horses to cars, so to speak, in every area of tech. That happens, and it just continues to happen, and it will continue to happen. I will say that I think a lot of tech people are sort of thinking and hoping and suspecting that AI is a little bit of a bubble, similar to like how NFTs or big data were, where, it was like a hype cycle and it was a new technology that was really, touted as the savior. And then it just like wasn't as straightforward to implement as we thought. There were a lot more hangups and nuances and complexities and stuff like that. And the hype cycle kind of died down, and that tool was certainly continued to be used, but it wasn't like, yeah, the savior thing. So I think a lot of people, even really smart people with some mathematical ideologies and things like that, are do feel that way. Um, so I understand that opinion. I think that the like singularity or whatever is probably more complicated and further out than we think, but I do think we're, heading that direction. Okay, so Code Jedi 123 says there's no way, even with 20 years experience, can you replace 3 developers. These developers have 3 times the mental capacity one person does, and that one person has to check every single bit of code generated. Absolutely no chance. I'm not sure. I'm not sure if he's responding to something that I said in the video. I don't think I claimed to be able to replace 3 developers now that now that I have access to AI as an individual programmer. I don't think that's accurate. I think what I said in the video is more to the lines of like, okay, I can take an 8-hour project and I can do it in maybe 6 hours because I get some help from the LLM, or I can do an 8-hour project in maybe 2 hours, sometimes, and sometimes maybe that 8-hour project will actually take 9 hours because I relied on the AI, and then I had to go back and forth and all that sort of thing. But on average, I would say it does make a general like 25 to 50% improvement. So, all right. Andrew GR 144 says, thank you for taking the time to weigh in on this important topic. I think this video is cogent and informative. I believe you're selling the work of junior developers short. Someone who can finish writing a well loop for you isn't a junior developer. They're probably not even an intern. Yeah, that might be fair. I think what you're describing is writing boilerplate code, and that the most useful breakthrough that we're just now realizing how much of modern programming is actually pretty mindless and repetitive, which I personally believe is due to the amazing functionality provided in standard or readily available libraries, which is something I think those of us who have been doing this for 30 plus years should have the perspective to appreciate, but somehow still manage to take for granted most of the time. I totally agree with this comment. I think I probably am really selling the work of like a junior developer short, or like not defining it very well. My experience has primarily been in, like, the agency experience, and I've worked on some really, really big projects, but it's normally been, like, we're coming in and, like, we're an agency or we're working with another agency or collaborating with an agency that has developers on staff. And a lot of times agencies will have like junior developers who are like barely developers or whatever. So I probably am not as familiar with like the product driven company where they have like 2,000 developers on staff or something like that. And so I think I probably am just, I think I probably am, misinterpreting that. So he keeps going. That's the high level takeaway for me, knowing at least well enough to reason about them in this context, how LLMs work. I am well aware that they do not and cannot think or do anything that is even akin to thinking. If it's able to do something, it's sometimes worthwhile to ask ourselves how that thing can be done by an entity that is purely incapable of understanding or thinking. In the case of programming, I think what we're learning is that we've been spending a fair bit of time typing things into code editors that don't provide much value. I love that thought. I think that's so well spoken. Automating that portion of the job should make programmers more efficient. But I think it's lunacy to suggest that LLMs either can or ever will be able to take the place of a human when it comes to the portion of programming that genuinely involves understanding and thinking and problem solving. There's literally nothing about the way LLMs work that would give them the ability to do anything like this. At their core, they're just mathematical algorithms for predicting what an entity, usually a human, would have written for any given prompt based on pattern matching on an unimaginably vast amount of data. What that can accomplish teaches us a lot about how we may have misunderstood or misclassified certain kinds of knowledge worker tasks, but it's pure snake oil to even imply that it's doing anything that requires thought. I think this is a very intelligent comment. I am working on another video now that talks about that whole idea of like work is way more than just like doing the programming. It's coming up with the solutions and meeting with the people you need to meet with and finding the resources and reallocating and re-switching around things and managing time and going back and forth on revisions. And there's so much to work and there's so much to development work that just to say, oh, wow, AI wrote this little piece of code or even the whole code for this page, amazing, it's going to replace us. It's a very short-sighted and doesn't take into consideration how complex work actually is and the things that we're building actually are. I totally agree that, AI has revealed how much time we spend like building the same things over and over again. And I will say that I have definitely been the like build it myself type of developer where I tend to be so hypercritical that I don't use a library for a lot of things that I probably could use the library for. I become suspicious about the long-term support of the library. I really want the markup to look a really certain way, and so I end up programming something I maybe could go faster if I was, just like grabbing a library and trying to implement that. And so I think that's probably like a flaw of my it's a pro and a con of my personality. I end up, producing things that are very like bespoke and really work, I think, really well in a lot of cases. And but sometimes maybe am prone to a little over engineering. So that's just the bent that I have, but yeah, I do totally feel like AI has helped a little bit liberate me and um from that sort of like, wow, I feel like I built this 10 times in a row experience, right? Which has been really nice actually. So yeah, I will say that I do think there's this idea that like, okay, LLMs, I understand how LLMs work, how they are basically using weights and attention weighting, and they are probabilistically generating output based on, a few components, what they can get from what the user's prompt has, what are the most important words in the user's prompt, what memory or information do they have about that user that they know that the user might prefer, and then also, whatever data is in their training set. And I totally understand that like a probabilistic output is super limited. I had an experience, earlier today where I was trying to get a certain type of code output, and it was dramatically wrong every single time. It was not helpful. And I just was reminded of like the limitations this morning as I was writing some code for what seemed like a pretty simple um, output for a spec table, not hard. So anyway, I will say that reason here's where I come down to like sentience and reasoning and all that sort of thing. Um, I know Apple recently came out with their paper where they talked about like, hey, they're not, LLMs or sorry, AI is not actually like doing any reasoning. It's just like following these probabilistic, outputs and things like that. And I think like that might be true, but does it matter, right? So I'll give you the example of like the creative process, right? We watched that Will Smith movie. I can't remember the name. I think it's iRobot or something like that, where they say, can a robot, play a symphony? Can a robot paint a painting, etc. And in that movie, um, that that quote is very interesting because now a robot can do those things. An AI can do those things. And so you can argue about like, is AI as good as human art or as good as human photography and all that sort of thing. But the reality is it's been able to emulate the processes. And I think that this is the differentiation for me, right? Certainly you can just emulate the output, but I think that there is also something happening where, and I'm not sure all of the technical science behind it. I'd love to learn more, but I think there is also a component where AI is being taught and learning how to emulate processes, right? Like the creative process is a process, right? And so I think just this like mimicking behavior thing, you can take it a lot further than you would think because you can actually emulate also not just the like output, but also the processes that get to the output. I think as long as you can like modify the methodology to do that, you can go really far. And I don't think it matters like if it walks like a duck and quacks like a duck, does it matter that it's not actually a duck? I don't know that it does. So if someone is so I'm just continuing reading his comment here. Beautiful comment. I appreciate the level of detail. If someone is speculating about the ability of LLM-based AI to replace programmers, they are of necessity implying that they believe that these programmers are not doing anything that requires thought, which I think is false even for junior developers. You're totally right. You know what? We have one guy on our team who is not a programmer. He actually has a background in organic chemistry of all things, and he does not know how to he didn't know how to program coming in. And he has been using AI to learn how to program, but also how to pilot the AI. And yes, he is able to do a lot of tasks that like I can't just tell the AI to do it because he's a really smart guy. And if I give him the goal, he is going to do a much better job piloting that AI to get to the end solution than if I was just to try to hand it to the AI. It just would not go as well. So yes, I think I think I would class him as like, intern level or junior developer. He's still learning, but he's very useful. And the AI is not that useful all by itself. So I think you're totally right in this. I'll keep reading. What I think may very well be true is that a lot of us underestimated the amount of the day-to-day work that modern programmers using modern tools are doing that is essentially repetitive and akin to using boilerplate or templates rather than actually solving problems or creating something new. Yes. While it is well known that programmers' time is not completely fungible, it may be the case that the increased efficiency of automating a higher percentage of the programming process will allow companies to lay off some programmers and continue to getting the same amount of work done, but I believe it's crucial to differentiate between being able to get by with fewer programmers because AI has replaced programmers at some X to 1 conversion rate versus being able to get by with fewer programmers because AI has increased the efficiency of human programmers by X%. Certainly, they both result in fewer programmers employed by that company, but they have very different implications in terms of AI's ability to replace the programmers who remain, and I think probably also have different implications for how likely it is that one of those laid off programmers can find work somewhere else. Man, that is so good. Um, yeah, I completely agree with that comment. I think that's fantastic. Um, Chris Donahue says, thanks for the perspective. Appreciate it. Thank you for the comment. Um, and Elenis says, coding for 35 years, running with AI now, being able to do the job of 3 coders in the same amount of time. That might be what the other guy was responding to there. You may have just experienced, first off, you may just be overestimating. And secondly, you may have just experienced really poor coders. I build the program and ask AI for bite-sized function blocks. I then link them together. It's like having a bunch of junior programmers under my wing, only none of them are real. AI is a great productivity booster, but program architecture and security still have to be done by a human. Yeah, I agree. I treat AI as a universal help system. Instead of relying on individual software solutions or subreddits, I can do all my own work without leaving the same environment. I love that there is plenty of open source offline models for LLMs and generative graphics. Cloud tokens cost a pretty penny, but if you run on your own hardware, then it just costs you electricity. I have replaced a ton of software with AI integrations. I even wrote AI video editing software by using AI. All I personally care about is getting more work done, and I belong to the group of people who don't care how things are done as long as they get finished on time. AI helps me do work. That's all I need to know. I do not like companies making AI tools, but I have nothing against AI as a concept. I look forward to AI evolution. I hope it doesn't stall because this stuff ain't cheap to develop. Disruptive to jobs? Well, yeah. If it was useless, it wouldn't be a threat, but it is useful. It is convenient. It is new, and novelty is exciting. Yeah, that's really well said, I think. And I like the comment where you say, I build the program and ask AI for bite-sized function blocks. That's pretty much the way I have found it effective to program. It's just not effective right now at giving it the whole thing. But if you give it bite-sized bits to work on with you, that's great. And then linking them together totally makes sense. You can even, take 2 pieces and say like, hey, these 2 don't work together because of X. Can you help me? And it'll help you. Very, very nice. I also think this is great. Yeah. Disruptive to jobs. Well, yeah, if it was useless, it wouldn't be a threat, but it is useful. It is convenient. It's new, and novelty is exciting. Yeah. Very interesting. Um, Somebody says under that, and now imagine what it can do in a couple years. Then you probably act more like the tech lead with 20 AI devs working for you. Possibly, yeah. Someone else says, oh, yeah, this is the original commenter replying. I've had my first encounter with a computer around 1988. Before then, all I knew about computers is what I learned from science fiction stories and films, and I assumed they were ages ahead of the actual tech. And I remember trying to communicate with a machine that only understood command line. Yeah. Wow. I thought it would be smart enough to know what I wanted, but it wasn't. Like Star Trek Scotty talking to the computer mouse, that was me. And I'm glad that I actually reached the point in history where it's possible to interact with hardware in a normal human fashion. Very cool. As for a machine from Blade Runner that can enhance photos, we can do that. Yes, we don't have replicators, but we have desktop 3D printers. We have close approximations of many items that were fantasy less than a generation back. Is that not a good thing? I thought we were screwed with AI back when only big corporations had the means to run it. But today we have plenty of offline models that run on consumer GPUs. I still can't wrap my mind around how a 30 gigabyte file is able to render any video you can put into words. Yeah. Crazy. I thought video generations would require storage the size of a YouTube data center. Me too. But nope, a home PC is enough. That means corporations will not be able to hold a monopoly over AI. That means AI can legitimately work for the end user. It doesn't have to be centralized. It can be a force for good, but will it actually be? I don't know. Uh, that's such a there's so much rich experience put into that comment. And I think it's really exciting to live in a time of so much change. And that's the question, like, how much change do you want in the world, right? Do you want do you want so much certainty that that, the next generation of technology is going to be just like the one that you're in? Or are you excited about the future? And yeah, I mean, I'm definitely choosing to go the excited route because it just makes life more fun. All right. Dr. Ednack says, what I like to say to clients is that software engineering is predominantly a problem-solving process. It's literally impossible to know how much it takes to solve a problem. Yep. Yeah. You know how much something takes if you did it before, but in software engineering, it's always different. Right. That's why you buy yeah, that's why you're making a new software. And not similar enough to be able to rely on some past experiences. Estimates in software engineering are merely educated guesses. That's also why I usually get paid hourly, despite that I would prefer working for the fixed price because of the uncertainty. It's hard to sell to a client that you need 100% more time just to be sure that doesn't work. Totally. Yeah. Um, yeah, that's a tough thing about software engineering for sure. Like, a pretty good guess could be 50% off. So yeah, we do a lot of hourly projects for that reason. And yeah, very, very interesting. But I agree, it's totally a problem-solving process. And if you were creating something that had a blueprint, you wouldn't need to create it. It would just be there and you could just buy it for a lot less than developing it for the first time. Um, let's see. User, ooh, that's long name. AI is a tool for a professional. I created a game for myself in 2 months without any skills. I just understood the logic and explained it step by step to the AI. If I can make animations, write code, create entire worlds without skills and education, what will happen to a person who has been doing it professionally for many years? AI will replace programmers, leaving only the AI operator and quality control. I mean, very possibly, yeah. Definitely. Uh, I think at this current time in history, it is very helpful to understand code and know what you're writing and understand how software architecture works. I think it's necessary to write like quality at scale applications, to write enterprise level applications. I do think it's necessary to know how to code and know what you're doing. I don't think that that's going to be the case forever. Just like, the comment earlier talked about going from the command line to now where we're at, the tools are a lot more user friendly. Even going from the command line to the graphical user interface, huge change, right? A huge change that took it from like, hey, people who can, really be a gearhead and remember all the command line prompts and, use a terminal to people who can click and drag a mouse. That's a huge change that makes it a lot more accessible. And, LLMs, which is oftentimes what we mean when we talk about AI, is like the next level of what, making a graphical user interface looks like. This episode I found to be spot on. Read the state of AI coding currently and where it's headed in the future and a guesstimated time frame until AI totally nails it. Very well done and well received. Thank you, Cameron. Thank you, the Earl Vix. Appreciate it. Um, Leod DeGario says, thanks, coming from an expert, experienced, and successful programmer. Appreciate it. Econ Dude 3811 says AI will be able to do anything a human being can do starting the day after I retire. All right. That's hilarious. I love it. Okay, this is a really good comment here. Gordon Freeman says, it is kind of an overgeneralization, but it is good when you don't have any idea what you're doing, and it's not good when you know what needs to be done. Yes. Yes. I think that is such a good statement. It is good when you don't have any idea what you're doing. You don't have a measuring stick to measure what is good code output and what is bad code output and why that's going to matter later as you scale or as you integrate with other stuff, or, what you're looking for or whatever. It's not good when you know what needs to be done. I'm certain that, people who are, art students are, generating these AI things that look great to me, but I don't have the eye to tell that it doesn't follow the rule of thirds or something like that, right? Except with, software application, it's not just about the form, it's about the function, right? Yeah, this is great. So, at least is my experience as someone who happens to be a lifelong programmer. Programming will probably not die, at least by these highly complicated and sugar-coated LLMs that act like they have intelligence, but in reality, they don't. Unfortunately or fortunately for companies, the amount of programmers needed for a project has drastically decreased. That's a fact. Yes. Yep. However, I see a lot of dependence on AI to write code in the industry from newer devs. And what I observe is that for those who are overly dependent on AI, they're not really learning from the mistakes they make, and their seniority process is ironically slowed down compared to the times we didn't have AI. If programming will die, it will die because of this. Yeah, I could see that being the case where, it, the amount of people who actually know what's going on and what is being generated by the output that they're putting in is just so obscured that no one really knows. I think that makes total sense. I do think that this has happened in every tech world, right? Like the hardware world. Everybody uses a computer without really understanding, the motherboard and all that sort of thing. Whereas back in the early days of the computers, people understood the hardware a lot more. Now it's so abstracted. We just open the laptop and go. So yeah, but I completely agree with that. Um, Jumpstar 9000 says, it's like you said, the real winners are the ones with experience who are writers, critical and lateral thinkers who can plan a course and feel the terrain. You have to be able to carry a conversation. No amount of leet coding is going to give you that. Yeah, yeah, yeah. I agree with that. I think he means vibe coding. Yeah. Um, Tech Dynamics says critical thinking, such as macroeconomic model, captures the essential outputs to draw inferences about the growth of the entire economy and forecasting and ability to judge. The forecasting skill would require skills that will be acquired only through higher education, so AI cannot replace that. AI can make a 14-year-old a coder and enable one to craft a shopping cart app or a to-do app like tasks, but it cannot replace critical thinking and policy understanding. Hence, AI may be a tool, but if the highly educated person uses it, then the result would be more apt in solving problems that are relevant and impactful. With this, what I am saying is that AI can and will replace coders, routine tasks. It cannot replace scholarship. It may propel people to seek higher education in scientific fields. Universities and research will not disappear. I think that's true. I just think that, yeah, for human beings to interface with the world, they need to be able to capture and process information and be able to recognize patterns and see how it interacts with other things and reason and all that. And yes, I think that training your mind is a method of being able to do all of that more efficiently. And so, yeah, I think universities, research, higher education, whatever you want to talk about, I don't think it's going to look the same as it has looked before. I don't think it's going to I don't think it's going to be effective to like get a textbook and sit in a classroom and all that sort of thing. And maybe it will be. Maybe that's a discipline that works for some people under some circumstances, but I don't think that's the only way to learn. But I do agree that mental discipline is going to be necessary to be able to keep up with this world. I've likened it to the gym, right? Like I have almost no reason to use my strength and physical prowess in most areas of my life. I just don't. Once in a while, I'll have a scenario where I have to like, you know, help somebody move something or, get something down off of a tall shelf or run really fast to, whatever. Yeah. So I have some scenarios where I need athleticism and strength in my real life, but for the most part, I don't. Um, but I need to keep my body sharp and healthy. And so I go to the gym every day. I lift heavy circles that I don't need to lift. I do a bunch of work that doesn't need to be done so that I stay sharp and I feel good. And we may start needing to do that for our minds if we get to the point in society where we are as taken care of by technology from an intellectual perspective as we are from a physical perspective. Vibecode.org says it's a vibe code world. Um, uh, this is interesting. Andrew JR144 says, I don't remember seeing this before. A bot that comments in order to induce humans to visit URL that is being sold for a sizable amount of money. In this case, they're asking a cool $30K for the URL being pimped by this bot. It's quite possible that this has been going on regularly forever, but this is the first time I've noticed it. So vibecode.org is a bot that is promoting a URL for sale. Okay, I've not seen that one before, and thanks, Andrew, for explaining what's going on there. Someone says there's a big difference between software development and programming. Yes, yeah, definitely. My company focuses on both web development and software development. We do mostly like web application type of stuff. So when we're doing software, it's largely like cloud-based applications. So kind of in the like web and web adjacent world, but definitely software in some sense. Nathaniel Cotton says, great vid. Thank you. Oh man, this one's going to open a can of worms. Chris Donahue says, any perspective on Web 3.0 resurgence and adoption? Okay, so Web 3.0, as I understand it, is mostly about decentralizing architecture so that it is not as centrally located. I love that idea. I think that decentralization is a very democratic thing. It's very like important to protect individuals. It's important for people to have agency and voice. It gives people like sort of an input into the economy, all that sort of thing. So I love decentralization. I heard something said by, I forget who it was, the other day. He said, you would think that the best AI is like hidden behind closed doors. But if you spent and he's a high level investor, so I'm inclined to think he's probably right. But he said, it's wild that AI ended up being democratized because like if you spent $1 million licensing fee a year, to get like the best AI in the world, you would get something that's like 5% better than the chat GPT you can get for $20 a month, And so it's interesting that it got democratized that way. And it makes sense to me because it's like crowdsourcing the data centers and the profit model and all that sort of thing, I think is certainly a very, it's a very expensive thing to do. So it makes more sense to like give it to everybody in the world and have them, crowdsource it, so to speak. So I do think there's some potential that will keep going. I also think that this like consolidation of power is a really big thing, right? We have been seeing a lot of consolidation of power, and we have seen a lot of sort of monopolization, and we have been seeing a lot of like, okay, now one person can do the work of two people, or the work of this person because they're working on a system that like 100,000 people use. Their work is way more valuable than somebody like working on the system that like one person uses. So I think that definitely it could be very interesting to go down the Web 3.0 route. I think it would take a lot of people agreeing on going down that route. And I think there is a tremendous amount of incentivization from companies to not fully go down that route, but to keep people the consumer, if that makes sense. So it's sort of like, I'm not sure that we're going to get away from a consumer-driven model where people are the ones individual people are the ones footing the bills. I'm not sure we're going to get away from that anytime soon, necessarily. But I don't necessarily see this like decentralization thing really taking off unless there's some serious financial backing and large scale adoption behind it. And it is really, really hard for things to get large scale adoption and backing without a lot of funding. It can happen accidentally as a result of like, people just adopting a system that ends up, the cost ends up kind of like going to zero or getting like ridiculously commoditized over time. That's sort of how things, I think, get decentralized. I think it would be great if we could, decentralize a whole bunch of stuff. But I think that it's more likely going to be, I do think there's a huge component of people being able to compete with companies because they just have the tools, right? The tools, yes, are certainly getting consolidated in some regard, right? The platforms are getting consolidated. There's like a few social platforms, and they are in charge of like all the information. Google now is like, Google's trying to win, even though they're like losing search market share. They're trying to win by basically just magically giving you the answer aggregated from content that they've scraped without actually having to share any of the revenue with the content producers, right? Which we'll see how long that model runs, but they are definitely trying to, consolidate everything. But because people keep being able to go faster and faster and do more and more, it's now possible to like compete with large companies as an individual person. So I think the competition is a lot harder. When somebody in their backyard can get more views than, a company that hired an ad agency and did all this work and spent millions and millions of dollars on their video, they have an equal competition level with they have an equal competition level. I do think there's probably a component of like government regulation that will probably help keep things from getting too consolidated and make things fair. I would make the competition fair and a level playing field. I almost feel like one of the most important things just to avoid, monopolization is just anti-monopoly laws. Like they're kind of like trying to break up Google and potentially make them sell Chrome and things like that. So I don't know that much about that type of regulation, but I could see that being very interesting. Okay, so I would argue that this comment is chilling. Oh man. I would argue that while you are using AI to assist you, it is using your 22 years of coding experience and those of many others to improve its techniques. By co-opting the knowledge of a legion of experienced coders, it will need you much less. Yes, that's absolutely true. That's absolutely true. Yeah, and that's just a hard reality, and it's like I'm not going to be able to like avoid giving it my code in order to get help with my code. You know what I'm saying? Like I don't think that's like you can't really play the game if everybody else is playing the game 20 to 25%, maybe 50% faster. I don't know. Like I totally understand what you're saying. I'm just not sure it can be avoided. I think we're just kind of stuck. So this is a really long comment. So maybe I'll do an individual video on that. I want to keep going. But I really appreciate it. It just might have to be its own video. Ali JF. So if I'm junior developer, I have to quit. No, no. I really hope I did not. I really hope I didn't infer that or make you feel like that. I think that the comment earlier about my misinterpretation of junior developers is probably really accurate. I've worked with a lot of people over the years who just are very linear in the way that they think. They're like, I do this, I get this output. That's it, right? So, and I've interviewed a number of people who have told me, oh, if you just show me how to do something, I can do it from there on out. No problem. I can follow the steps and do it. I'm like, well, that's not that useful because, you're going to be in a lot of situations where it's not going to be clear exactly what to do. And you're going to have to like make decisions and all that sort of thing. So, I would say like, if you're a junior developer, and you're like learning, I do think it's totally worth it to learn. I think that you just have to be ready to pivot. You have to use AI as a tool. And try to learn as much as you can without AI. We have a dev on our team who's not really a junior anymore, but she like really heavily tries to not use AI, just so she can keep her skills sharp. And she particularly when she was more in a learning phase, did that a lot. And I think that she's certainly progressing very fast. But yeah, I think that's a really good thing to do. It's like those mental exercises I was telling you about. But I would say if you can problem solve and you can, be, a friendly, helpful resource for people, there's so much work for you, right? If you want to be in the tech field, there's so much work to do. There's so much stuff to solve, so many problems to solve, so many people who need help, so many people who just want somebody to come in and like fix the problem for them, so many people who can barely write a prompt who just need help, but they are good at other things that you can be a solution, you can provide a solution to. So no, I don't think you should quit. I think you should keep going and find resources to help you and all that sort of thing. So no, I did not mean to infer that junior developers are useless or you should quit. So this comment, man. All right. Next level, please says, it's going to replace all of them, bro. I could full on, create anything that takes you a whole year and I could do it in one day now, LOL. Like if people knew just how easy it is to code, need any knowledge, you just need to tell your AI system what you want to create, enable, give you simple, easy copy steps where you never have to touch an ounce of code. I'm what they call a master Python 3 developer and never went to school for programming except for HTML back in the day with no developer college or programs. What's the weather? I didn't even study the basic parts of the code. What's the weather? Was he like, he's got to be voice texting this, and he asked what's the weather in the middle. That's amazing. I didn't even study the basic parts of the code, and now I know how to do it better than most developers with the simple AI system, LOL. Oh, I had to go check out his profile, and there's no examples of serious projects that he's worked on. I don't think he's ever worked on an enterprise project. I don't think he's ever done anything like that. So maybe, I don't know. But I don't take that comment too seriously. Um, I thought it was kind of funny, but yeah, yeah, I mean, there's definitely things that you put in a prompt and you get an expert answer out of, ChatGPT or Claude or Gemini or whatever you're using to code. There's definitely a lot of stuff like that. I just don't think I think this is a Dunning-Kruger effect, right? Where like you don't know what you don't know, so you don't know how to evaluate what really creates an abstract or a full-scale system architecture. So you think that you're better than you are at this, but if you got into a large system that had a lot of dependency trees and you had a lot of like users and you had a lot of stuff, moving parts and stuff like that, you would find that I think you would really hit some roadblocks really quick with this type of idea, and you would realize, oh wow, no, I'm not at the level that I thought I was. I realize that all the time. Um, Somebody says, PowEX says, is AI could help you learn programming? Yeah, totally. Yeah, I like the comment from Jim Wielders under that. You can ask it all the things and it will explain patiently. Just make sure to have it clear up anything you don't understand. Love that comment. I think that's exactly right. Collective Sartori says, I've been coding since the womb. Yes. I I don't look that old. I'm 32 and I've been coding since I was 10. So yeah. Now, yeah, I mean, I was writing, pretty basic code at 10 years old, but I did my first paid project when I was 14. So yeah, basically coding since the womb. Mm, I'm gonna skip a bunch of these because there's just a lot of them. Second 313. What's your response to Apple's recent claim that AI is a scam of a make believe? Overall, who cares? I mean, again, if it looks like a duck, quacks like a duck, it can do duck things, right? I don't think we have a good definition of like sentience or intelligence or whatever, right? Like I think we're just, it is what it is. So, if it can copy what we do effectively enough, it works for that purpose. So I don't really care if it's like reasoning or if it's just like using probability. All I care about is the output. So I think if we can keep fine tuning the outputs to get closer and closer to like a reasoning sort of thing, um, it is what it is. So, all right. Let's see here. Should junior devs start learning vibe coding? I'm not interested in coding. I'm willing to learn about prompt engineering, system design, and vibe coding. I feel like learning to code should be skipped in 2025 as long as you can understand the code using AI assistance. Sure. Yeah. I mean, I don't think it matters what path you take. I think that you decide what problem you want to solve and you learn what you need to learn to get there. I think that I have the ability to solve problems a lot faster and better than a lot of people because I have the background of code, but, it's not going to be worth it on every project, on every problem, all that sort of thing. Um, there may be vibe coders who are, finding innovative solutions to pass me in some areas, right? Because they are just using the resources differently. They're asking questions and prompts differently. Like, I just think start with the problem you want to solve. Like, don't like, I don't think we need to like ask like, how should I learn this or that or whatever? Just like try to solve problems and then learn what you need to learn along the way. That's more my thought process. Naya Bingi says, nice work, but I didn't really like the video that much in terms of content. The ideas need to more concrete, too much spitballing. Okay, wants my ideas to be a little more concrete with less spitballing. Yeah, but I just wrote down general bullet points before I made that video, so I was spitballing a lot. And I will take that feedback into consideration. Maybe that is something that I need to improve. Okay, let's see here. This is a fun one. Port 8080 says, multi-million software company, but hustling for views on a YouTube channel. Yeah, I'll clarify that real quick. That's a funny comment. So yeah, multi-million, we do about 2 million a year in revenue. And there are 4 total business partners. And then a bunch of employees and a bunch of expenses. So, I'm not like, I do pretty well for myself, but I'm not like crazy rich in any stretch of the imagination, especially compared to, where I aspire to be at some point. I want to grow from here. Certainly from a like YouTube perspective. So I'm making content because I want more awareness. I want to grow my channel. I realize that attention is like the currency of the day. I want to, quote unquote, get more attention because, that is sort of one of the ways that that you can be effective at work now. And so I am trying to grow my online following and stuff like that. Yeah, so I am hustling for views on a YouTube channel and I'm starting from like nothing. I mean, it's not like I'm at some lofty place or whatever with there's certainly, yeah, I have an agency that's fairly established and stuff like that and has really great clients and does really good work and has been around for a long time and has a good reputation. But in terms of like my social media and YouTube presence, I got nothing, dude. So yeah, I'm totally hustling for views. Like, so thank you for your view and your comment because it helps my engagement. But I also really like talking about this stuff. I find this really fun and I like the engagement. So Mr. Garlic Bread 9105 asks, "Are you AI?" I don't know, but probably not. Let's see here. Crypto Craze 4672 says, no jobs have been replaced by AI. Companies can't pay their bills with these interest rates. I do think that, yes, every time I do think that AI has been a really great excuse for companies to do a like cull, right? And to do rounds of layoffs. Anytime they can get sort of a like public excuse or whatever, to just like lay off a bunch of the people that they were hoping to lay off anyway. Yeah, I totally think they will do that. So I don't know how many of these jobs are like, getting replaced by AI and how many were just people that were kind of like on the chopping block anyway, that the companies were like not that enthusiastic about having. But I agree, the interest, the economy is challenging at the moment. And in the US, the economy is challenging at the moment. And yeah, companies, of course, anytime there's something crazy going on, they'll use that as an excuse to do some layoffs. Unvifun Limited says, how much did you get paid for this AI propaganda? AI will never be able to replace human supervision. I did not get paid anything, but if anyone would like to sponsor a video, I mean, knock yourselves out. So, yeah, I mean, I don't know. I don't know if it will never be able to replace human supervision. I think it's going to take a little longer than I originally thought, but we'll see. We'll see. So anyway, all right. Well, thank you everybody for all your comments. I really appreciate it. And I am looking forward to the next video. Next thing I'm going to talk about is going to be pretty interesting. So I want to talk about like how work actually, even when AI does all the work, quote unquote, we might actually get busier. So we'll talk about that next time. Thanks so much.